What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Tequila Tuesday episode brought to you by our good friends at Sendoso, Scotty's Little Sales Club's official sending partner. This is our last Tequila Tuesday of the year. This is like episode 71 or something like that. So we've been doing these for about a year and a half or so now. Really appreciate everybody who makes an effort to attend these shows live. That really helps us keep the conversations going and makes it a lot more fun for our guests, I'm sure. But appreciate everybody who takes some time to watch these videos on YouTube once we upload them. And I know it's hard to make them sometimes with life and work and all that kind of stuff. So big shout out to everybody. Appreciate everybody who's a part of this community. And thank you for spending some time with me this year. My guest today is my friend Travis Ashby. Travis is the founder and CEO of a company called WorkLife. Previous to that, he spent some time at a little company called Spiff that I think a bunch of you know of. And Travis has the distinction of being the only person on planet Earth to simultaneously have both Lease brothers as an advisor to his company. I don't know if you knew that, Travis, but it's the one-of-a-kind situation here. So Travis is going to talk to us a little bit about sacred money, what it's like to really dig into our own personal goals and dreams, how companies can potentially play a part in that. And really excited for this conversation. I actually think it's a perfect topic to wrap 2022 and kind of lead us into 2023. So without further ado, Travis.
Awesome. Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invite, Scott.
Of course, man. I'm glad you're feeling better. We had Travis caught, one of the 9,000 viruses that probably came from his kid's school a week or so ago. We had to reschedule. So
yeah, it's kicked my butt. I've had this weird cold, and then both my ears got clogged. And so if I'm talking really loud, I'm sorry. If I'm talking really quiet, I'm sorry. I have like half my hearing right now, but we're going to power through. So anyway, it's great to meet everybody. Yeah, just a little background. I've been in sales since I was 16. Started off working for Coke and then Pepsi, joined the dark side. Pepsi's way better, by the way. And then moved into sales at Verizon. I was selling Yellow Pages back in the day, believe it or not, when we still had phone books around, and an online directory called superpages.com. Did that up until 2007. And this will feed into kind of what I'm doing now. But in 2007, the economy was crashing. I was selling this product called superpages.com. And I remember walking into this guy's office one day. He was a heating and air guy. And he was having to get rid of all of his marketing, except for maybe like two things. And I remember seeing my competitor leaving the office. I don't know if you guys remember that online directory called Dex. Anyway, it's DEX, as Dex knows. But I thought they had a better product than we did at the time. And so I thought for sure I was getting canceled. And I went and talked to this guy, and he said, "Hey, I've got good news. I'm going to go with Money Mailer, which was like a direct mailer, and I'm going with superpages.com. And I was a little confused. And I asked the guy, "Well, how did you come up with that decision?" And he's like, "I hate working with that guy. That guy's an idiot." I'm like, "So you're going to work with me just because you like me better than that guy?" And he's like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "Well, what if he has a better product than me? You mentioned that you can only do two sources of advertising, and if they don't work, you're going out of business." And anyway, he said, he's like, "Well, I just trust you. I trust you're not going to sell me something that's not going to work for me, or else, I got to fold up shop." And so it was right then that I realized I couldn't sell something I didn't believe in. And I went back to the office, and I found the other top sales guy, a guy named Scott Linford, who we ended up being business partners for about 8 years. But we ended up launching a cool call tracking company where we were able to put tracking numbers in all of your advertising. And at the time, recording wasn't a big thing. So call recording was a big deal. And we were able to kind of just listen to calls and track everything and be able to figure out, for every dollar we're putting into this marketing, we're getting this much back. We're breaking even here, we're losing money there. And anyways, we ended up quitting our six-figure jobs in 2007 when the economy was crashing, and made six figures, for years. It just kind of crushed it because we found something that really helped business owners. And so that was kind of my journey, stumbling into entrepreneurship. We built that company for 8 years. And then in 2015, I woke up one day and I just wasn't inspired by it anymore. I felt like I wanted to go make an impact in the world and make a difference. And I spent 2 years on a crazy journey trying to figure out my why, I guess. And I remember like 2 years into this, my wife's like, dude, you got to go get a job. You're blowing through all of our savings. We gotta make something happen here. And I was kind of at my limit, just really frustrated. And I called up one of my founder friends, a guy kind of like Scott Leese, went to lunch with me and just unloaded on this guy, how frustrated I was. I'm like, gosh, I've got to do something that I'm passionate about, that can make a difference in the world. And he started asking me questions. So his first question was like, well, how do you get inspiration? What are times in your life when you've been the most inspired, and what brought that on? And I ended up just kind of being very vulnerable and sharing with this guy some experiences from my life. And one of the experiences I shared with him was this time when I was 12 years old. My mom was in a singing group, and she'd recently divorced my dad, and things were getting kind of crazy in my life. And she married this pilot boyfriend. They were flying to Colorado, and the plane crashed in the mountains of Colorado. And I remember after my mom died, it was a tough time because I treated her kind of bad before she died, and I was wrestling with some different things. And so I just told this guy about this story about how after she died, I had this dream about her, and it was a very vivid dream. I kept a journal at the time, and so I have it all written down. But I remember climbing over this boulder on this mountain, maybe 13,000 feet, and seeing this plane fuselage spread across this mountainside. And I saw my mom. I ended up talking to her on this mountainside, and it was this really inspirational dream. I remember just kind of telling this guy in passing, gosh, I've always wanted to go there. I feel like I would know that place if I saw it. It'd be a really inspiring place. And he stopped me. He's like, dude, we're literally talking about like helping you come up with inspiration. Like, call your sisters before you leave lunch and plan that trip, or you're never going to do it. What are you doing? And so I called my sisters up. I asked them if they wanted to go, and they're like, yeah, of course we do. So we planned the trip for August. This was 2017. And the day before we were going to leave, I suddenly remembered that after my mom died, my grandma, who was in the singing group, she gave me this picture frame. And inside this picture frame was a bunch of money that was like fanned out, and her driver's license and some things from her wallet. And, as a 12-year-old, a couple $100 is a lot of money, but I could never bring myself to spend that money. I could never bring myself to open up that picture frame and spend that money, because I considered it sacred money. So I held on to it for 27 years. And the day before we were going to leave, I remembered that money. I told my sisters about it, and I had an idea. I just said, hey, I've had this money from mom's wallet for like 27 years. What if we had her pay for our dinner tonight? Like, what if we had mom pay for part of our river rafting experience? And the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, was open up that picture frame, take that money out, hand it to this, and spend it. But what that did for me was unlock this idea, unlock what I'm doing now. It was transformative. For 3 days, I was hanging out with my sisters thinking about this idea of sacred money. Like, if you had sacred money, what would you spend it on? And as I was asking people this question, I found that what they naturally did was think about things that were meaningful, and think about things that they spend money on that actually made a difference in their happiness. And because we all know we spend money on the stupidest things, right? Our money and our time on the dumbest things that really don't make us any happier. And so that's kind of where the premise of work life came from. And so now I'm just like trying to help people set aside sacred money. We call it your work-life balance. It's an actual savings account that we create for everyone. And we try to help people find their why and their purpose, and be able to, surface their meaningful work and life goals. It could be a big trip like I went on, but could also be like obstacles that are preventing you from doing your best work, living your best life. It could be addiction. It could be a nasty divorce. It could be you lost a child. Like, there's any number of things that come up, right? And so what we do is try to surface these things. And then we try to go to companies and say, look, why don't we help us help you, help your people, go do things that matter in their life. And why don't we align incentives, align the things that they care about, and align the things that your company cares about, and find where that common ground is. Because that's how I feel you unlock inspired work from people. So I'll be quiet. I would love if anybody has any thoughts or sacred money kind of ideas that came to their mind. I think it would be amazing to hear if anybody's brave enough to share.
Well, my bucket list has always been going on safari in Africa, and it's one of those things that I've always said I wanted to do, but I've never seriously planned it or saved for it. So, I mean, I don't know if that's anything to do with my why, but it's just been like an emotional calling that I've always just wanted to explore the culture, the animals, have that experience of, being fully present in that environment. And
That's,
so I don't know. I've
that's
never
awesome.
thought about sacred money. It's just,
What stopped you from going? I gotta know, Jill. Like what has been like the main things that have stopped you from?
oh, what is it? Divorce, 2 kids in college, like practical stuff. I mean,
Life,
it's
right?
not like I couldn't go. It's just not having a person to go with, all those kinds of things. It's just one of those. It's a exciting trip. I want to plan it. I want to plan it with someone. My sister said maybe, but nobody is as passionate and excited. Like, I've done research about where I would go. Oh, Kelsey wants to go with me.
There you go.
Okay, awesome. Well, now
There you go.
I
See, you
have
put it out. You
a
put it out there,
plan. I
and you
have a
find people who
partner.
want to go with you.
Kels, woohoo. So I don't know, but it's interesting you use the term sacred money. And by the way, I'm sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That kind of had to be a profound experience for you at that young age. But it's what an inspiring way to spend that money with your sisters and have your mother's memory present there with you. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Appreciate it.
Who else? Who else is not feeling shy right now? Tim, I'm going to call on you, Tim.
Hell yeah. I'm in the same situation. I have like emotional callings towards things, but I can't figure out the why.
Maybe you can help him with that, Travis. Because I actually think that that's a very common response amongst people. Emotional callings to things, but can't quite figure out the why.
It is. You know what?
How do we unlock that for Tim and others like him?
Well, it's a great question, Tim. And that's actually one of the biggest things that I want to try to solve is helping people unlock their personal happiness equation. Because for everyone, it's different. And it's different at different times in your life. What I cared about, what made me happy 10 years ago, 20 years ago was totally different than what makes me happy and what I care about now. And life happens, different things happen. And so I think it's something that we got to be like, be pursuers of happiness and be able to be figuring that out for ourselves. And so one of the things that me and my co-founders are working on is creating something we call the inspiration engine. We want to be the best in the world at inspiring people to discover their why, their passion, their dreams. And sometimes people in our software, they'll create a goal and it's like, why did you create this goal? And they don't know. They're just like surface created some goal. It doesn't even matter. I'm like, we can just set any goal in the software, but like if it's not going to like point you to kind of like your higher thing, like your purpose or your calling or whatever it is, it's kind of like, what's the point, right? And so I found out early on that like I was shocked by how many people had no idea what a meaningful goal was or didn't have their dreams or passions figured out. My co-founder John's on the call too, but I would say maybe like even 70% of people have no idea what would be meaningful. And so they need help. And so that's some of the things that we're actually figuring out in our software is like how to inspire people. And a lot of that inspiration comes from people in this group community, right? Like it's like you might not know. And then all of a sudden you like hear Jill and like, let's say that like, she's got this, cool thing she wants to do, whatever. And you're like, oh my gosh, like I want to do that. That's something I'm going to do.
One of the things that you might want to think about, Tim, is what the ability to go do this thing represents. So for example, I'll use Jill's safari trip, Jill and Kelsey's safari trip. I have absolutely no idea how much it costs to go to Africa or go on a safari trip, whatever. But to me, when I think about that trip, which is not something that I want to do, by the way, but when I think about it, it's like there's a lot of freedom wrapped up in being able to do that. I got to have the financial freedom to do that. I've got to have the time to be able to go do that. I have to be not afraid of taking risks because maybe it's a little bit scary to me, at least, to sit out there and have some lions run at me or something like that. Right. And it's like, I'm going to this place that's like kind of totally foreign and so much different than I'm used to. And so maybe there's a part of you that's like, that's independence. That's like, I've made it. That's freedom. That's risk taking and bravery and courage, like being put into practice. So one of the things I try to talk to people about is those things, like dig into the thing a little bit and see if you can't unlock what it represents emotionally or metaphorically, that type of thing. So
Yeah, Scott, I think you're right on there. I mean, for me, I mean, to be completely vulnerable, it's more as a single mother, it's more about giving myself the permission to do it, like to do something extravagant just for myself.
yeah, sure. And probably a really big deal and something that's a long time coming. Right, Jill?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we were at a company. We were launching with a new customer a few months ago, and we were like having this all hands meeting talking about this. And one of the ladies reminds me so much of you, Jill. She had the same thought. She was embarrassed to share what her idea was, and we're like, you got to tell us, like, let us know. And her whole dream was to go shark diving, right? Like,
God,
she was just like, I want to go shark diving, but like my husband would never want to do it. My kids would never want to do it. It's probably selfish of me to think about. And, we were like, oh my gosh, like we got to make this happen. Like, what needs to happen for this? And she's like, well, first I'd have to get scuba certified. Then this, anyway, there's kind of this progression of things that she would need to do. And, and the business owner was like, oh my gosh, like there's a bunch of stuff that you could do for the business on the side to help unlock this, make this happen. And so it was kind of fun just to hear, someone kind of voiced the same thing where they almost felt like it was kind of selfish of them. And we're like, hey, like in my personal work-life goals, I've got like family things, but then I got like a roller coaster trip to Ohio, and my wife's not invited. And I love my wife, but she would go to Disneyland every year, and I'd rather gouge my eyes out with a spoon than go to Disneyland again. And so I'm like, I want to go with the boys, and we're going to Ohio, and we're going to go to Cedar Point. We're going to go to Kings. We're just going to go hit these amusement parks, and this is what we're doing. And I've never given myself the permission to go and do that. And I finally just like, no. And I'm so excited to go. I'm like so pumped to go in August. And my wife's still convinced our kids only like Disneyland. I'm like, because they've never experienced anything else. So anyway, I'll be quiet. Who else has some things?
I'm going to call on somebody. Go ahead. Go ahead, Terry. I was about to call on you anyway, so it works.
I kind of thought you might, so it's like, shit, I'll volunteer. I'll take the win. Yeah, I'm a couple weeks shy of 48. It's taken a long time to kind of figure out some of this stuff. I have, for a couple of reasons, like I'm looking for family connection. So my parents are black and white dad, black mom. Neither of their parents supported their marriage when they got married in the early 70s. And so we grew up without extended family, just me and my brother, right? So like I've always had kind of this search for connection to family. My wife's family, on the other hand, is like big family. Mom is the oldest of 10 kids from Thailand. So being able to go and see my wife's grandmother before she passes, she's probably late 80s, about 90. So we're going to try to go next summer to go take our 3 kids to go meet her, right, and see kind of the rest of the family. And that connection is huge for me. The other bit that ties into this for me is, so my dad was like, worked all the time, wasn't around a ton. And his answer always was like, why you work so much? Is always like, for family, got to take care of you guys. Well, what he did with all the money he made, he gambled it all away and like played golf and did all kinds of stuff. So it's like, it takes you a long time to realize like, well, that's bullshit, right? You're telling me you're away a lot because you're working for us, but you're spending all the money on yourself, right? So I feel like I've got to fix that with my own family. Like I don't blame him for the working hard bit, like how he spent those resources. So those are like the two things I'm trying to solve for my kids: that connection to extended family, and also just like giving them the benefit of the what I'm working for. So yeah,
Dude,
there's that.
Terry, that is awesome. Like, dude, people always blow my mind with the stuff they come up with. Meeting your wife's grandma in Thailand, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Lives there. She lived there her whole life in Thailand.
So we lived there for about a year and a half. My wife and I, she's from Texas, I'm from Cali. We met in Japan. We lived in Thailand. We have a weird long story, but this grandmother came for her first time to the US in 2001. When we came back from Thailand, grandma flew with us and came to Dallas from Thailand after, she was like, that's 2001. She's probably almost 90. So she's probably almost 70. She went to Dallas in December and it was cold. She'd never been cold in her life. And she was supposed to be there for quite a long time. And she was like, F this. I don't know how to say that in Thai. But she was there for a lot shorter than she was originally supposed to be. But that was the only time she's been to the States, and she traveled on a plane with us. So yeah, she's been there her whole life.
That's so awesome. As soon as we unlock peer-to-peer money transfers, like I would be pulling up your work-life goals right now and putting money into your account for that goal. Like, that's so cool. I love that. Gotta push our product team on that. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Terry. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. This is great. I love this discussion.
Yeah. Trigger any inspiration for any of you? Anyone else?
Do you mind maybe repeating the question?
Yeah. It's, if you had sacred money, what would you spend it on? That is the question.
I think Elise is ready. We'll have Elise go first.
I'm having a hard time thinking about the answer to this question right now, but I really like the question. And I can tell you how I've answered it before. And when I was like 7 years old, this dates me a little bit, but I was reading the encyclopedia and I came across Sri Lanka and I was like, it captured my imagination. And I knew I wanted to go to Sri Lanka. When I grew up, I was going to be a doctor in Sri Lanka. I was a little 7-year-old girl in the Midwest in Michigan. And if you ask me, what are you going to do when you grow up? I'll be like, I'm going to be a doctor in Sri Lanka. Everyone would be like, where is that? Like, it's the largest island off of India. And this went on forever. And then I grew up and then I was in my early 20s and I was living in Portland. And I realized that like, if I died, the one thing I would regret is not having gone to Sri Lanka. But the fear in me was like, well, you were supposed to be a doctor. Like, spoiler alert, I didn't become a doctor. And so it was like, well, you need to do something cool. Like, you can't just go to Sri Lanka. Like you just have this desire to go to Sri Lanka. Like, what are you going to do? And then I realized like, hey, you know what? Actually, what I believe is that our desires are our path in life. And perhaps there's something in just following it. So I dropped out of school. I changed like everything that I was doing. And I was like, I'm going to Sri Lanka. Like, that's it. What if? So I did. And I crafted this like round the world trip. Ended up being that you could keep going for very little money. And the only thing I can say looking back now is that I was on top of this mountain and I met someone very briefly and we exchanged information. And a year later, I was living in Colombia and he was living in Brazil. And he was like, hey, you want to meet in the Amazon and like go down to Bolivia and like go to Peru and shit? And I was like, yeah. So we did that. And then he was like, oh, I ended up getting this job working in Peru for a while. Because of that connection, I also ended up moving to New York City and my whole life kind of unfolded from there. So there was no like aha moments ever when I was in Sri Lanka, but I do think that realizing that dream gave me my next dream. And sometimes I think that is the value of a dream, is that it points you in some kind of direction. So I believe in that fully. And yet I'm realizing like, oh, I need a new dream or I need a new thing that I would want to spend some sacred money on. So thank you for that inspiration.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. It's awesome. I think Erica was going to go.
I apologize, you guys can't see me, but can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm driving, so I'm like, I just got off work. I think for me, when we talk about sacred money, I guess I'm kind of still in this boat, but growing up, and I don't know if anybody can relate, but I can relate to some of you guys where, you know, you have parents that don't support your marriage or support maybe the dreams that you've wanted to accomplish. So you just ended up, you know, going into a different route, like becoming a doctor or becoming a lawyer. And at the end of the day, you realize that's not what you want to do. For me, I've learned that I do want to, you know, work in many different businesses to get the experience so that I can have my own business in the future and be able to make a lot of money so that I can provide that for my kids and invest it into, you know, other things so that when they are older, you know, they have a support, like a backup money that they can use to invest in other things and grow in the future and be able to support their kids. But most importantly, like, I want to use that money to be able to travel with my family, because I want I want to give them everything that I never had growing up. So if I had, you know, a lot of cash, I would use that for the most important things that are in life, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is what's happening now. It's not about your work. It's not about your job. It's because the last thing you want is to, like, when you're 80 years old, you regret not being able to do all the things that you wanted to do as a kid. So I think, like, right now, just for me personally, my goal would be like, just invest all the things that I can now, so by the time I'm, you know, older, I can enjoy the most fruitful things and be able to travel like some of you guys, which, by the way, super awesome that you got to go international and you know, have open up opportunities. So I guess I kind of hope that answers the question, but that's kind of like what I would do if I had, you know, sacred money.
You absolutely answered the question. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I'll chime in. So in a lot of ways, money means security, right? And the thing on the top of my mind is buying a house for my family. And so that's the most tangible aspect, but it might not be the only one. But there's a whole long list of things that fall into the security umbrella.
Yeah, awesome. While a few of you others are thinking of things, I wanted to just kind of share a concept with you that's kind of cool. There's an idea, I call it your happestry. So think of like a happiness tapestry, right? So imagine that you're at the end of your life, and on your wall next to you is this tapestry of your life. And on the tapestry are images of things that brought you the most happiness. You know, what is on there, what needs to be on there before it's all said and done. So some things to maybe spur some ideas is, you know, like I always think about, like, you know, what meaningful accomplishments and learnings would you hope to see, like, that are represented on your happestry? What places, passions, pursuits did you discover and unlock? What cherished relationships, experiences, and memories did you create along the way? What difficult trials or obstacles or personal shortcomings did you overcome? These are just some things that you might be thinking about. But imagine if you had your happestry, like sitting in Scott's desk over there by his Buffalo Bills jersey, like if that was his happestry, and all of a sudden there was like surfboard on there, I could be like, Scott, dude, I see your happestry over there. What does the surfboard represent? And he's going to have a cool story, and it's going to tie back to something very meaningful and personal to him. And so what I want to do is help people create their happestry. It's actually going to be the name of our podcast that we're going to create. We're going to have people kind of share their happiness hacks and what their personal happiness equation looks like to them. Part of what I want to be able to do is go to a company and say, look, nobody cares about your company or your mission, your vision, or your goals unless you care about theirs. And I think that companies spend so much time talking about themselves, and literally nobody cares, especially now, right? Like you have employees, employers, and there's this kind of eroding divide that's happening. And I feel like companies have it all backwards. Like the way you unlock inspired work for people is like, find out what they care about, help them get further faster towards those things, actually give a shit to ask and find out, right? And then why don't you actually align incentives, sales incentives, recognition, like benefits around things that people actually care about, instead of stupid gift cards and cash and swag and stuff that means nothing to people. And so this is my soapbox that I'm on right now, but I just feel like companies have it so backwards, and they need to like start caring about people. And I feel like it's going to be almost impossible for like employees and employers to come back together and have any kind of trust. I feel like there needs to be a third party, a company that's in the middle, that's an advocate, that's like a mediator between the two, almost like a nasty divorce, right? Like it's like to open up communications, like resolve things. I feel like that's where we're positioning ourselves. And this isn't meant to be a sales pitch. I'm just helping you understand the passion behind this. Is like, I feel like we could be something that people could carry their work life account with them through their entire career. And what we could do is go to the company and say, hey, we've got 5 people in your company that have private goals that are around mental health. Why don't we unlock some matched money for them to get the help that they need? And now you're not having to tell your company that you're struggling with things and worry that you're going to be in the next layoff or something. And companies can actually help people do things that are meaningful to them. And so anyway, just planting that kind of idea of tapestry in your head. I would love to continue to hear more like ideas from people, but I just wanted to kind of plant the idea of, it doesn't have to be like this awesome trip. It could also be getting vulnerable. What's an obstacle, right? That is taking happiness out of your life. And so those are some things to think about.
I want to share one thing which aligns a little bit with like tapestry, the concept, as well as what Travis just said, which is like the obstacles. I used to do this training that anybody in a leadership role can steal from me if you want, but I used to give people like 2-3 minutes, can't remember the exact amount of time, but you write down everything that you want to do in this life before you die. And if you don't get it out onto paper, then it'll never happen. And so the idea is you're just not filtering at all. It's just like, oh my God, I have all this pressure to write as fast as humanly possible, or the safari trip is not going to happen. The Sri Lanka trip doesn't happen. The Thailand trip doesn't happen, right? So then you pause and you're sort of like, okay, y'all, how do you feel? And everybody's like fucking jazzed beyond belief because you just wrote down all of this stuff that you want to do, right? Then I'm like, flip the piece of paper over. Now you have to write down all of the things that are blockers or preventing you from doing all these things. You got 2 minutes, go. And it's like money issue, family issue, health issue, whatever. You write all this like negative kind of nasty shit. And then you're like, now how do you feel? And everybody's bummed out as much, beyond belief, right? I just listed all this horrible stuff. So now you got 2 sides of the paper. And so you'd line up everybody like in a row, single file, sales leader kind of at the front, whatever. And you tell everybody, come present me your piece of paper. Nobody's going to look at it. So it's all the obstacles facing you, and everybody else is going to like cheer and like kind of pump you up, and you punch through the obstacles to get to the goals. And if you really want to do it properly, what you do is you get these pieces of wood. It's like a small rectangle that's like 3 centimeters thick or something like that. And you write all these things on wood, not pieces of paper. And we would have these like anybody from like a big, huge offensive lineman to like a very small elderly lady who's an employee who'd look at this piece of wood, and psychologically you're like, I cannot punch through a piece of wood. Like, what are you talking about? But the wood is built in such a way that if you hit it right here with meaning and intent, it will snap. And so every single person can punch through it. And it's just metaphorically like I'm breaking through my barriers to get to all of my goals and achievements. So feel free to steal that like concept and training. But I was thinking about that as Travis was talking about tapestry, and then he touched upon all the obstacles. So for those of you in leadership roles, that's a really cool exercise to do with people. I did that with 250 salespeople one time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I held 250 pieces of wood like this while everybody punched right through. I had like 4 or 5 people who hit me in the chest. They punched so hard. It was a lot of fun though.
What, Scott, was there any like big surprises that came out of that? Like people talking to you afterwards and just like, I don't know, I'm just curious.
Well, there's a lot of people who it's actually like a bit of an emotional release.
Right.
And you know, I'm not hyper emotional, I don't think. So I would always felt like it was more fun or whatever. But for a lot of people, there was a lot like wrapped up in that kind of thing. And, you know, they'd come up to you afterwards and they loved 200 people cheering them on and applauding. They loved supporting others. They couldn't believe that they punched through this piece of wood, right? A lot of people would say, I felt a lot of pressure to write everything out or it would never happen. Like the idea that I'd never get to do this thing moved me to dump it out onto the piece of wood or onto the piece of paper. Right. And then focusing, I realized a lot about my mindset. I focus on all the bad shit. I'm depressed. I focus on all the good stuff. I feel good. So some of those kind of insights, I did it so many times that it wasn't a surprise at the end. But the first few times I was like, oh, wow, I didn't expect, you know, Travis to come up to me after and be like super emotional, like he just, you know, had an exorcism. Anyway, steal it. Go for it, Sam. Go ahead and steal that.
I love it.
Thanks, Scott. I'm not going to be mailing any wood, though. We're fully remote, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, you know, maybe at your sales kickoff or something like that. But you can do it with a piece of paper, which is the El Cheapo way. It's a little less intimidating, but the proper way is these blocks of wood. So
while we're at a little pause, I gotta share the most random thing that we found out the other day from a sales org. This was so crazy. We were talking to a sales manager and he was just saying that like he heard what we were all about. And he's like, oh my gosh, I've got this rep. And the only thing that he cares about right now is he wants to buy a horse for his wife. Like she's always wanted to have a horse.
Never heard that one before. That's a new one.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, it's not like you're going to find like a horse in Sendoso Calig, right? Or Occitan or something. But it was like the coolest thing. But the thing is like, that's what would bring him happiness. Like he listened to the sacred money thing, or, you know, as you're thinking about things, like it's just like, he just wants to do that. And his wife's the one that like handles all the bills and finances. And so there wasn't like really any way that he could like figure out how he'd surprise her with people. We're like, oh my gosh, you could totally do that with what we're talking about. We just can set aside this money to this sacred money account and then like, you know, align some incentives. And what's cool is that as you surface these goals, all of a sudden you find people in this network, right, that like have ideas like, oh my gosh, my family has a ranch. I totally know how to help you with that. And so like, it's kind of fun to see the magic that happens when you like kind of surface some of these things. But anyway, it was just like one of these kind of interesting random goals that I had never thought of before. Hey, we've got John on the line now. This is my co-founder, John, everybody. John Alarcon. He's in San Diego.
What's up, y'all? Sorry, I've been lurking for a little bit, so it's good to see everyone on the line.
Yeah, and just so you guys know how John came into the equation, I had I'm a sales background guy, right? Like it was going to start a tech company, and I had never started a tech company before, like not really. Our call tracking company was like a third-party call tracking provider, and so I found my co-founder who was an engineer, sold the previous business, and then I'd spent almost 5 years kind of planning out, gaining experience, I guess, to be able to launch this properly because it meant so much to me. And one of my stops along the way was a company called Blueboard, and that's where I met John. They're an experiential reward platform, but John was kind of one of the early employees there. But John, do you want to like introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So John Alarcon, based in San Diego. Got a wife and 3 kids, age 6 and under right now. So kind of living that life. Don't get too far out of the like 5-mile radius of our house, but so kind of been in SaaS probably the last like decade or so. You had a pretty extensive background in like sales leadership leading up to this point. But yeah, was an early employee at Blueboard. Spent about 6.5 years there, and got to see some really cool growth, like going from 0 to 50 mil as a company, close to 250 employees. And yeah, it was just amazing to work with a lot of different customers and companies. I was on like the customer success side. And so, that's kind of what I've been bringing to work life is how do we figure out how to make this meaningful and effective for our customers. And I love these stories that surface. I forget who exactly was saying it. maybe it was you, Jill, about, getting permission almost. I went through something similar. I've actually been wanting to get LASIK for 10 years, actually longer than that, over 10 years. And I just never felt like I could take money out of my savings account to do it. Cause like, I have small kids, like there's always something to fix on the house and things like that. And, it wasn't until kind of went through the process of reflecting and thinking about, what is meaningful. I think Terry mentioned quality time, or someone else mentioned quality time. And I realized that, gosh, a big blocker to actually enjoying and immersing in life is like literally being able to see past like 5 feet in front of me. And so go figure, right? And so that was kind of the thing for me, that kind of prompted me to think differently about how I spend my money. Or am I like just getting money for the sake of getting money, right? Just to grow a number, have it sit in that account. And, for me, what was the most meaningful was being able to wake up and see my kids, or like being in San Diego, when we go to the beach, if I dive under a wave, my contacts get knocked out, and literally like the rest of the day is kind of ruined. Like I have to wear glasses. My wife has to drive me home. It's like, it's not fun. Right. And so, that's something that, isn't too glamorous, like just getting corrective laser surgery. But to me, like that's actually going to drive a lot of value and a lot of meaning in what I value. So, oh, cool. Thanks for linking us, Scott. But yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting hearing, what people think they should pursue. And when you kind of peel back the layers and think about like, well, what are my priorities in life? What are my personal values? Like, should I be pursuing those things? Like, is that actually what's going to bring me the most happiness in life? There's a framework in positive psychology, which do many of you know like much about positive psychology, or kind of where that comes from? Cool. Seen some yeses, some nos. So kind of quick history lesson, like positive psychology comes from, obviously psychology, and up until about the 1990s, historically psychology has been about treating mental disease and mental illness. And so it's like, how do you get someone that's maybe like at a deficit back to a steady state? And so in the 90s, there came along this thought of, well, like that's good, we should continue to do that. But if someone's actually at a steady state, how do you get them to flourish? Like, how do you get them to a state of happiness and flourishing? And so there's kind of a model in positive psychology that's called PERMA. And there's basically like five aspects to it. Kind of constructs where if you focus on these areas in life, you're scientifically proven to be a happier person. And so those areas are positive emotions, is the P. E is engagement or finding flow. R is relationships, having meaningful relationships. M is having meaning or purpose. And then A is achieving or accomplishing. And so I bring that up because within that framework, what you value, it varies from person to person, but there are ways to kind of like focus your efforts on areas of your life where, maybe if like for me, my way of like engaging more in life is getting LASIK. For others, it might be, I heard like building connection with family, which is like having meaningful relationships. It's just so cool that there's such varied and diverse kind of approaches to it here. So just wanted to share that framework because I think a couple people were saying that like, hey, I'm not sure if that's what I should be focusing on, or if that's like the thing for me. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, great comments, by the way. Yeah, Laurie Santos. Where do you find her stuff? It's the Coursera, John? Dr.
What's
Laurie,
that?
Dr. Laurie Santos, her like, living the good life type.
I know she has a book and like another course. I don't know if she's actually on Coursera.
Okay. Well, one thing to call out too is the longest ongoing research study that's still happening is 80 years old. It started back during World War II, where these scientists followed JFK and a bunch of other kind of early graduates throughout their life to find out what brought people the most meaning and happiness in their life, or what led to longer, happier lives. And it's still going to this day. And if you go look at there's lots of there's like a TED talk on it. There's a bunch of stuff on it, but it all came down to one thing, that is the best way to kind of live longer, happier lives. And it was meaningful relationships, So like, you'll notice, like, sometimes you'll see like a couple where like, if all they have really is each other, and then the one passes away, like a lot of times the other one will pass away like really soon, because, they lost like the most meaningful person in their life. And so it talks about how like, that's such a key driver of happiness and long life, is just having quality. It's not quantity. It doesn't matter. It's as many quality, relationships as you can. And so that's one of the things that I would love to do, is be able to help people kind of strengthen the quality of their relationships. Like, for example, if I could be someone that could be like, dude, Terry, you've got a 15-year-old. He's going to be out of the house in 3 years. It's going to go by this fast. What do you have on the calendar to create memories with your 15-year-old before he's gone? Like, stop working so hard. Like, you got to create those memories. You're going to regret it the rest of your life. Like, what are you doing? Like, I want to be like able to stop people and like help people kind of just like refocus on what really matters in life. And so these are some of the things that, like, I hopefully with what we're doing, we can help people like look back and be like, gosh, if it weren't for my company and maybe what work life did, like, I don't think I would have done this, or I wouldn't have written the book that I've been wanting to write for like 10 years or whatever it is. But hopefully a lot of you are like kind of thinking about things that matter to you in your life. I like to ask people, like, if you could do one thing that would bring you happiness, no matter the sacrifice, what would you do? Right. Hit people with this, just have you think deeply about those things. But does anybody else have anything that they wanted to share, or questions you have for me or John?
I have I guess something kind of interesting, not directly about myself, but someone that I work with, that I manage. I hired this person at the beginning of 2022, feels like 3 years ago, but it was January. And pretty like early on in the interview process, like seemed like someone who was just not going to be an issue to manage, very like quick, picked up on everything immediately. As soon as they were on board, very quick in onboarding. And throughout their time with my company has been like consistently one of the easiest people to manage, in that they're just very straightforward in their communication style. They ask for what they need and they execute on the stuff they're supposed to execute on. But in like maybe our first or second one-on-one, we were talking a lot, and I learned pretty immediately that he doesn't care at all about his software sales career. He has like an entire separate dream of like rapping, and actually has like a huge Instagram following and is like pretty good at rapping, like very surprisingly. When he first told me that, I was kind of bracing myself for having to pretend like he was good if it was brutal. But he's actually like very good. But he
wasn't Jimmer Fredette's brother, was it?
No, but he tries to keep everything like very, very separate. So like he won't post on LinkedIn because he doesn't want to have a LinkedIn profile that then will like dilute his Instagram presence. And it's super interesting, but like this whole conversation has me thinking about him, because he's a very unique like management situation, in that pretty much all of my other reps want to be AEs or want to be something else in SaaS and see themselves like making it big in SaaS. And to him, it's just like funding his rap career until it takes off.
That is so cool. Dude, I'm so glad you said
I
that.
love that he knows his why so clearly, Sam, that he doesn't want to dilute that dream. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and like I am by no means a rapper, but I'm a music fan. And like, I don't know, a good chunk of our one-on-ones, once we've cleared out his stuff, because he's a top performer, we don't have to work on that much day to day as an SDR. We just like talk about music. And so we're also like pretty good friends now. He trusts me a lot, and I feel very good about like the managerial relationship as a result of that.
Did you ask him that? Because I always feel like it's important for me anyway, as a leader, I always try to ask people what motivates them. And even though I might not know my why exactly, I have a few of them, but I don't have one driving one at this stage. But I always try to ask them so that I can relate to them in a way that isn't just.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been a manager for about a year, so everything I do in management is stolen from something a good manager did for me. So I tried to, in the remote world, do what someone did for me in my first SDR job, which was like week one, whatever, pretty early on, took me out to lunch, didn't talk about like work at all and spent the entire hour like trying to get to know me, understand like what I wanted to do. And we were just very clear on like what my goals were. And if the goalposts moved, like I knew I had that kind of like lifeline to talk to them about that stuff. So it just made the job a lot better and a lot easier, especially as like a 22-year-old. So it doesn't work quite as well remote. But you know, you can try and do it. And I did the same thing for my reps, and that was where he first started talking about some of this stuff. I don't think he actually kind of admitted it to me for a little while, but it is interesting. Like no one else in my company knows anything about this, which is kind of wild.
It is wild. Sam, out of 10 managers, how many managers actually are like that? Of every 10 managers, how many actually would bother?
Let's see. This is my 4th SaaS company. That was the only manager that I would say was like truly like that. My first one.
0.25.
It's got to be point something, right, Scott? Like
0.25. He said he's the only one, and he's got 4 companies. That's 0.25.
Yeah.
Quick math.
I bet that pans out.
Yeah. Work on your Excel spreadsheet game, Sam. 0.25.
I think it's such
out of 10, so it's technically 2.5, but I didn't want to correct you, Scott.
It's such an interesting situation, Sam, because like literally companies don't want to lose people, but if you actually help that person hit their goals, their goal is to leave your company. And I think it goes back to what Travis was saying. There's this natural like tension between a company and their goals and an individual and their life goals, right? And so as a leader, how do you rectify that? Like, how do you do your job, which is help people, help the company grow and hit numbers and stuff, but not at the expense of the individual? I think it's a really interesting, kind of question. It's almost like a moral dilemma in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree it is, but also I think companies are really short-sighted, especially if you're thinking about like entry-level sales talent. Best case scenario, they're with your company for what, 18 months?
Yeah.
Like if they get promoted and it goes kind of well, even still, like it's not going to be much longer than that. So to think about like a hire that you're paying like 50 or 60 or 70K base or whatever as something where like they need to be fully invested in the, it's that whole conversation about like building someone else's dream versus your own dream. I think that's very relevant to this too. Yeah. The idea that they need to care about the founders making a lot of money in an exit is pretty silly to me at that level. They just need to care about hitting their number and be invested in their work for whatever the reason is. That's good for my company, ultimately.
Yeah.
Totally.
You're totally right about being short-sighted. Like I tell companies and founders this all the time. I'm like, look, it takes 12 months to ramp a rep. They're leaving now on average like 18 months. So you have 6 months of a fully ramped rep. It's just like, how do we extend that, right? But companies, like a lot of times, like to what John's saying, like they're so short-sighted. I mean, what if you found out that like your rep is their dream is this is a real example that they want to launch a food truck, right? Like they have a 2-year goal to launch a food truck. It's going to cost $100,000 to do it. Like if their company just knew that and knew that they could keep like this guy like inspired and motivated to like hit that goal, 2 years in and go do that, like that guy's going to do inspired work, for those 2 years. But instead, reps will tell us things they don't tell their company, right? And so the reps like starting this t-shirt shop on the side as a side hustle to try to save up money to be able to eventually launch the food truck is just like, oh my gosh, like there's so many things that person could just do for the company if the company just could align around what really matters to this person and not be so short-sighted. And it was crazy because this rep was like, would barely hit quota and then go 2 months, 3 months, or quarters and be on a pit plan and then do what he had to do to like hit quota again. And it's just kind of like just hanging on where I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many better ways to inspire this person. And it's like clearly in front of us what that is. It's just like, so man.
I think it's also like in SaaS, it's such a small, tight-knit community that unless the people that are leaving your company really have no talent and no hope of doing anything, making sure they leave on good terms is really worth a lot. You know what I mean? Like I'm a good example of it in this conversation. That first manager I had was my first SaaS job at a company named Greenhouse. I bought that product in 2 of my later 3 jobs. and I've now used it like intensely and gotten my whole company to use it at my current spot. So the fact that they like made sure I went out, you know,
Yeah.
in a good headspace has been like literally something you could quantify in dollars in their pocket.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I totally believe that. I've always thought that companies should have a wall of fame, and anyone that came into the company and made a difference while they're there, that did inspired work, they should have their picture on that, and you should celebrate them. You should seriously be putting money into their work-life balance every year on their anniversary, even though they don't work for the company anymore. You should be bringing them back for an alumni dinner. Like, you know, PayPal's wall would have like Elon Musk, you know, all these people. But companies don't think that way. They just, you know, they're so short-sighted. It's just like, oh my gosh, you know, is anybody in, you know, Toronto upset that Kawhi Leonard came for 1 year and then left, you know, after 1 year? He brought a freaking championship to that city. You know, it's just like he should have a statue out front. I don't think anybody's pissed that that guy came for 1 year and then bounced. It's the same thing with employees. Like, man, the way that we unlock inspired work from people is to be able to find out what they care about, help them work towards those things, align what the company wants, what this person wants, and now they're going to be jamming for you, you know, making stuff happen. So I love it. Sorry, I get my soapbox sometimes. John knows this.
No, you make such a great point, Travis. I mean, like, that's what we teach people how to do with your customers, right? Find out what they need, find a way to give it to them and give it to them, right? Why don't we do that with our employees? So many customers, I mean, so many managers are threatened by it, or feel like they'll develop this person and then this person will leave. Well, so what if they had a profound experience while they were with you? That will follow you and deliver rewards in so many ways.
Well, and do inspired work while they're there instead of quiet quitting.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Thanks for that.
And boomerang employees too, to you know, Sam's point. Like, people will realize the grass isn't always greener, and they go and they're like, gosh, you know, I'm going back to there because, you know, even though it was like a pest control software company, nothing that I would ever be passionate about, they cared about the things that I cared about. And I was able to be transparent with them. They helped me unlock those things. So I'm going to just go work there again, you know. Guarantee that would happen.
Any questions for Travis or John, or any more thoughts on the sacred money topic, goal setting, stuff like this? No?
I have one.
Go ahead,
you had started to say it, Travis, and then I think we went on another path. But you know, I've traveled a lot in my life, and I have my dream home, and I've had, you know, and I have my husband and kids and a grandchild and all that great stuff. And so sometimes, like, I'm looking for something different. And you said something like, hey, it doesn't have to be this trip. You said it could be being vulnerable. And then we got off track. And I guess I'd like to hear or see more examples of what does it look like when it's not this big trip, you know, which are awesome, which are cool. Or if you go on the trip with your kid, you know, then it's this cool thing, but it's not even about the trip at that moment. It's about being with your kid. So I guess I'm interested in that.
Yeah, you know, I always just think of two things. I think of, you know, what's going to motivate someone to do their best work and live their best life, and what's preventing people from doing their best work and living their best life, right? And I just don't think companies are equipped to be able to handle people's issues. Like, HR is not built to help people overcome depression or addiction. In fact, I feel like a lot of people would just feel threatened, like, oh my gosh, I got caught up in the layoffs because I guarantee it's because I told them that I suffered with mental health or whatever. So I just feel like there's a huge problem where, you know, companies just can't. I want to do for companies what they can't do for themselves, which is to get candid feedback from people about what is preventing them from doing their best work. And so, like, you know, if you're dealing with, you know, like the addiction issue, you know, I want to be able to have people be able to set that goal in work life as a private goal that I can see, and then be able to facilitate a way to unlock matched money, hopefully eventually pre-tax benefit money for people. It's because in my mind, I'm like, why are we only giving pre-tax for 401k? Why is that the only thing that you can put money into an account and get matched money, pre-tax matched money for? Like, that is so stupid when we're dealing with like burnout and mental health and all of the things that we deal with. It's like, it's one of my big passions. It's like, I want to unlock that. I want to unlock that for people. If you put $1 in to work, I want to be able to unlock 5 or 4 or whatever it is, pre-tax benefit for you to go get help you need. And I want to be able to facilitate that so that the company doesn't know who you are. They just know 5 people in the company are getting help that they need. And they still know that it's the company that's willing to do that for you. And so I just feel like that is the way to solve this problem. It's not by having HR built to do this, because no one wants to let their company know that, whatever, like nobody wants to do that. And they're not even built to help you do that. That's probably, I don't know if that's down the track of what you wanted to go down, but it's just, those are just things that I'm passionate about, that I'm just convinced that like employees and employers are never going to find common ground on certain things, because there's just no loyalty in business. Like there isn't, but there is a way to kind of like align, I guess. Alignment's my big word. It's like, how do we align? What the company wants is this, what people want is this. How do we help them make sure that what they want is what they really want? That's going to make a difference. How do we get that alignment? Because that magic, I think, is right in that middle spot. It's creating that alignment. So it's what I'm most passionate about.
That's really refreshing to hear, Travis, because I was actually in a very similar situation that you just described. And the company I worked for is one of the best in the industry. But I was like, I can't go to anyone about this because I will probably risk my job. And so I was just like, I'd rather just walk and keep my slate clean. So, yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. I think it's a real problem, honestly.
There's a question. I think it's awesome, the attraction and retention aspect of this for a small company. Competing for talent is also super cool. But and the question being, how flexible is the platform as well? So some people are going to have these giant goals that'll take a long time to get there. Some of them might be smaller. Like John said, he wants to get LASIK. Like I did braces for myself during the pandemic when everybody's wearing masks. Like for something that bothered me forever, John, to your point, when you're sharing that story, it's like, dude, it's on my mind every damn day. Like, let's just do it. Right. So what about these short-term goals? How flexible is it to be able to say, okay, all right, LASIK is my goal. I did this. It took this long, done. Now I can get into something else. Because if it is flexible enough, that also helps in your one-to-ones and your people management. I mean, there's a huge benefit to it all.
Yeah, it's a great call out, Terry. I think the thing that is part of my vision is that people won't go into like work life and create their big dreams and goals if they know they're only gonna be at the company for a year. That's a problem. That's once again an example of why companies cannot do this for themselves, because that this is just one stop in a journey, and it's probably only going to last as long. So I'm not going to waste my time. But if I'm coming to you saying, Terry, you're going to carry this with you through your entire career, load it up. I want to know your big dreams. I want to know your 10-year dreams, your 5-year dreams, your 1-year dreams, your 3-month dreams. Like I want to know that you want to do a monthly date night with your wife because you suck at planning that and you're not very creative and you don't know what to go do. Get that in the software. We're going to make sure that happens every month. I'm going to go make sure that your manager is paying for that every month. Like load it up. And then I just go to that company and I say, listen, Terry has a lot of awesome goals. We've known him for 5 years. You just hired him. Why don't you just like link up to his public account and let's just help him get further faster towards things he cares about. You don't need to worry about coming up with new spiff ideas. Your ideas suck anyways. It probably involves gift cards and cash and things that people don't care about. So stop guessing. Just link up. They pay me $5. Sorry, this isn't meant to be, they pay me $5 per employee per month. That's what they do. And then they have access. And now it's like, great. I know exactly what Terry's working towards. And we can just align. We can be like, hey, look, this Thailand trip, it's going to cost 10 grand. Well, guess what? It's end of Q4. We got to hit this number. Like, dude, I just talked to the CEO. Like, if you help us, it's going to be nights. It's going to be weekends. It's going to be a grind for like a month or two. But if you help us, Thailand's done. It's paid for. We're going to send the camera crew out. Like, this is going to be awesome. How much more motivated are you than this stupid Cancun trip, this President's Club that you're going to go hang out with your coworkers in your swimming suit when your plus one doesn't want to do that? Like, what are you talking about? Like this booze cruise stuff, it's like, this is old school. This is not stuff that people care about anymore, at least not in that context of the way the companies have been doing things like that. So yeah, dude, I get passionate about this stuff. Like, I just think that so many incentives are so backwards and we're just doing the same things we've been doing for 30 years. And it's just like, doesn't get to the heart of anything. And that's why these coin operated sales teams, no wonder there's toxic culture. No wonder there's toxicity in a sales culture, because it's all about coin operated stuff. It's just money and cash and whatever. It's just like, well, you know what? The next company that comes around the corner offers you more money, you're going to be gone. that company's going to lose their top reps. Because how are you intrinsically motivating people? And it's like, something that I'm super passionate about is just like, we got to get to the heart of things with incentives. We got to find a way to personalize it at scale, which is hard, but there's a way to do it, I feel like.
I'm super curious because I'm on board. Like if I never get another Yeti cooler pair of swag socks again, I would be stoked. But I'm curious what the response or feedback has been in the industry, especially with the trend right now towards AI and kind of this idea that the computers are about to take our jobs. And essentially what you're saying is like, we need to treat humans more humanely, more as like full people, right? So you're arguing for a fuller picture of humanity. And I think there is are these two forces kind of, sometimes when things start swinging towards the machines, it goes even more human. Is that what you're finding, or is it kind of in conflict?
There's so much conflict out there. I just think that companies have it totally backwards. They completely have it backwards. They haven't figured out a way to, navigate this. And it's, I've had to be really quiet, honestly. Like I haven't been able to like share my voice out there because we've been in stealth mode. Like we needed to get the software and the platform to a certain point before, we're like, hey, we're this third party, company that can sit between companies and employees. And like, here's this, we have like a very unique opportunity to get to market, load everybody up with a work-life account. It'll be free. And so I've had to kind of just like John's had to like, I'm like, dude, I want to go on LinkedIn and blast out this vision. And it's like, we're not ready yet. We gotta wait. So we've been in stealth mode. Like if you go to our website, like you won't see much there, because for me, it was really, really important that this actually worked, that someone could look at this and say, holy crap. Like if I wouldn't have used work life, I would never have done this thing that's made a huge difference in my life. Right. Like that, what my mentor did for me, which is to pull out of me this trip that I'd subconsciously thought about for 27 years, but never consciously thought about. It took him to be able to pull out of my head this idea and actually commit me to put it on the calendar, to call my sisters and have this level of accountability where I actually went and did it. That's what I'm trying to actually solve for right now, is accountability. It's like when I find out that like, Terry's goal is this, I want to make sure that you're going to do it. Right. And your manager is probably not equipped to help you do that. And so like we have this idea, we call it Tapestry Consultants, where you actually have like not just the software, but you actually have a dream manager essentially. They can you can have with you, carry with you too, that we can unlock, and that person's like your person, and they're just like, all they care about is helping you unlock your dreams. So lots of different things that we're working on, but I'm just like waiting to just announce our seed round next month, and then just kind of like announce this really awesome trip that Scott knows about. It's called the Future of Sales Summit. That's going to be in Bora Bora. We're actually going to have a way for like a lot of people to join us on this thing. And it's going to be people that are going to inspire us with their work-life goals and dreams. Like I'm going to find ways to get a lot of people out at this thing. And we're going to like get the smartest people in the room, like your Scott Lisa's of the world and all the other people that care about this. We're going to get in a room and we're going to solve the future of sales. Like we're going to create the world that we all want to be part of and can be proud of. And it's going to be by celebrating people that sell with empathy, with ethics, to understand the value of teamwork, and then also hit their numbers, right? Like we've got to celebrate people that are doing it the right way and weed out the people that aren't, and weed out the companies that aren't, and all of that, all of the above. I mean, there's just so much work to be done, but like I can see a path forward that I think can be really awesome for sales. And that's what I'm like super passionate about.
On that note, I think that's a good place to kind of pause and wrap it up. You heard that right. Pay attention to Travis and John and work life and this future of work event coming. I think it's 2024. Is that right?
Yeah, we're going to actually go to Bora Bora in February 2024. I was just there 2 weeks ago, scoping out the excursions, scoping out these are like bungalows.
R&D. Yeah, we get it, Travis. R&D. Yeah.
R&D. R&D.
Did you get to go on the R&D trip, John?
I was just gonna say, believe it or not, we only had budget for one person. Go figure. Huh? Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, we thank Travis and John for spending some time with us talking about sacred money. Really cool discussion. Thank you everybody who shared and opened up. And that's it. That's a wrap for Tequila Tuesday in 2022. We'll see y'all next year. Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.